Hi there. Um, I've changed venues up a bit. You might have noticed. I used to be at the desk in my library. Used to be at the desk at my computer, and now I'm standing in my library. I thought, just for the sake of visuals and everything, I would change things up a little bit. Um, my next book is a really interesting one, and start out with a bit of a vignette that illustrates why I think these kinds of books are really important. A few years ago, if any of you watched The View with Sherry Shepherd and Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and all those other people, a few years ago, Whoopi Goldberg said they were talking about some historical matter, and Whoopi Goldberg said that the Romans and the Greeks were around before the Christians were. To which Sherry Shepherd responded, no one was around before the Christians. And she was being completely sincere. She actually thought that no one had existed before the Christians. And of course, she should go read the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Analects, and hundreds of other sacred texts that were around before Christianity was around. However, being Christian herself, Sherry Shepherd should have realized that there was one religion that really did inform her own Christianity, and that's Judaism. Of course, Judaism formed Christianity because it literally gave birth to Christianity. And this next book is really an illustration of the many historical, textual, literary ways in which that's true. This book is From Jesus to Christianity by L. Michael White. And the subtitle is How Four Generations of Visionaries and Storytellers Created the New Testament and the Christian Faith. This is not a history of all Christianity by any stretch of the imagination. It's but like I said, it is most important for showing those historical continuities between Christianity and Judaism. Many people seem to think that one day we just woke up and there was Christianity, and most of these people seem to be Christians themselves. So a book like this is a nice corrective toward historical illiteracy. If anyone's out there looking for a sort of a one-stop introduction to early Christianity, this might well be it. It's a wonderful book. In fact, I usually use an index card, as you can see right here, to try to organize what I want to say in a review. But about 100 pages into the book, I realized that there would be no way that I'd be able to do justice to all of the information that he was presenting. It's a lot of information, and he's really rallied his sources in a very intelligent but succinct way. And also, don't let the little blip on the cover, I don't know if you can see what that says, but it says by the featured expert on the PBS special From Jesus to Christ. It's got that little sort of gimmicky looking sticker on it. Don't let that fool you. I haven't seen the PBS special. I do plan to watch it very soon. But I can certainly assure anyone that wants to read this book that it has quite a bit of scholarly rigor and vastly more detail than any television program ever could, even though that television program looks to be several hours long. I was just looking it up, and I think it's 4 or 6 hours long. I found the first quarter of the book, which includes a very rich and detailed account of the ways in which ancient Judaism informed both the thought and practice of nascent Christianity, or as White calls it, the Jesus cult. And he doesn't mean that to be derogatory or to be condescending. He just calls it that because Christianity wasn't really a word that was available to early Christians, especially first century Christians, so he uses the word Jesus cult. We get a quick history of the post-Davidic Israel with an emphasis on the cultural and social and political strife that was occurring at the time, including a history of the various imperial occupations with which Jesus dealt and the radical politics that this occasionally spawned. White then goes on to try to construct the historical person of Jesus by looking at the four Gospels and the Pauline corpus. This is where White starts to include quite a bit of rigor that maybe even a more interested reader might be not terribly interested in. We get charts, rather detailed charts, talking about the intricacies of the synoptic problem, including the two-source hypothesis and the two-gospel hypothesis, also known as the Griesbach hypothesis, and the Farrar-Goulder hypothesis. There was another detailed table on page, I'll show you guys, 136 and 137. See that. That talks about what's called the Q hypothesis, which is an idea that the Gospels were taken from a pre-written source. And I'd never even heard of a few of these before I even read the book, but he covers them all nicely, succinctly, but you really do walk away with an idea of knowing what they say without having to have read an entire book on each one of those ideas. And by going over those ideas, I don't really mean to suggest that the book is hopelessly obscure. It's really not. White gives a detailed account of Paul's Aegean travels and an analysis of his letters to various new Christian communities, again, replete with numerous charts which he uses throughout the book. There's a wonderful discussion of the Jewish apocalyptic tradition and Jewish sectarianism, which people dealt with in the Gospels in the first century. And thankfully, White doesn't just include the canonical texts that are actually in the Bible, but he also talks about non-canonical texts like the Gospel of Thomas. In later generations, White discusses the development of various Christological controversies and the rise of what he calls the normative self-definition, that is, the normative self-definition of Christianity. How, for example, did Christian communities define themselves in relationship to their often Jewish past? How did they define themselves in relationship to Hellenism? For interesting answers to these questions, especially answered through the spectrum of morality and ethics, there's another really good book that I'll be reviewing very soon called The Origins of Christian Morality by Wayne Meeks, who was a professor at Yale University in the Divinity School. I tried to think of some aspect of New Testament history or ancient Christian society or the literature that White doesn't touch on, but I couldn't think of one. The material is represented in chronological order, which makes things very easy to find. They're not topically oriented. And this might not be the exhaustive book for someone interested in the minutiae of, say, the dating controversies of the Gospels or other books or hermeneutic approaches, but this book provides a more than solid introduction and has the virtue of having 35 pages of endnotes. Like I said, the scholarly rigor is certainly there. White himself is the Ronald Nelson Smith Chair in Classics and Christian Origins and the director of the Institute for the Study of Christianity, for the study of Antiquity and Christian Origins at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is one thing this book is missing, it's a chapter-by-chapter reading list. So, if you want to know more about the dating controversies, here are the books you can read. As I recall, some of the charts give reading lists at the bottom, but they're very short, maybe with 6 or 8 or 10 books per list in them. All in all, you really can't go wrong with this book. It's a wonderful stepping stone to this kind of history, and it's, written very much for the intelligent layperson who's not an expert, who's not a scholar, but is really interested in how Judaism informs, in myriad ways, Christian practice and Christian belief. From Jesus to Christianity by L. Michael White. How four generations of visionaries, storytellers, how 4 generations of visionaries and storytellers created the New Testament and Christian faith.